I have a log here from lazyeyes. Lazyeyes is flying an Eachine Racer 250, ready to fly 250 Racer. Here's a setup, 1300 milliamp hour nanotech battery, 45C, 5045 bullnose props. So a pretty standard setup. And thank you for submitting a log and a video, but for some reason when I click the video, I get a link not found. So we're just going to be looking at your log. No big deal. I looked at your gyros as I did in the previous video that I posted for George. Your gyros look fine. I'm not going to show that. They look fine. No problem. Very common to see that the gyros look fine for people flying beta flight because the filtering is so good. And if you're flying beta flight and you have a noise problem, you really have a noise problem. But you don't have a noise problem, so you're fine. Have I said you're fine? I think I said it. Okay, good. Moving on. So then we go to your roll axis. Your PID's on roll. And I wanted you guys to compare what you're seeing here to what we were seeing on the previous one. If you're watching them all, like you're binge watching an episode of Breaking Bad, you watch the previous one and you come right to this one so you have it fresh in your mind. Look how the P term here, it's moving. It's not oscillating in the sense that I mean it. It's rolling waves, if you will, instead of hard oscillations. And in fact, when the throttle is relatively low, it's barely doing anything. Now, granted, you're just hovering now, which isn't a proper test of the system, but we're not seeing a ton of activity. And in fact, as you raise the throttle, which you're about to do, as you raise the throttle here to full throttle or darn near to it, notice even then we see a little more motion, but we don't see these crazy hard swings like we saw on the previous one. Okay, so this is a well-tuned P term. Now we're really at full throttle here, and we're seeing more activity, but we're still not seeing huge, crazy oscillations. And I actually, I'm not flying it, so I can't say for sure, but I feel like this is a really good place for the P gains to be, where at full throttle you start to see them get active, but at moderate throttle they're just loping along, right? Like a I don't know, like some kind of animal that lopes along. Um, Now, on principle, I like to raise my P gains as high as I can, not to the point where you would get oscillation in flight, but to the point where I would want to see if I raise my P gains another 0.2, would I start to see oscillations here that I didn't like? Could I raise them another maybe 0.1 or 0.2? And as soon as I start to see anything that looks even remotely like oscillations here that I don't like, I go right back down again, and that's where I stop. But since you got to full throttle, and I don't even see anything that even remotely starts to look like oscillations, I kind of wonder if it could come up. But if you didn't want to do that, you wanted to leave it right where it is, it's probably flying pretty good. Okay, so as you drop throttle, we get a little dip here. That's sort of normal. I would be really curious. We do see here on the gyro trace, as you drop the throttle, notice there's no input from the roll stick. But as you drop the throttle, we do see a little bit of sort of wobble and bobble here in the gyro, left, right, or right, left, I'm not sure which. It's probably small enough that it doesn't really matter, but I'm guessing that maybe there was some buffeting from the wind or something as you drop the throttle. Maybe the I term could come up to help deal with that a little bit. Don't know. Here we got a roll. Notice that in this roll, the P term rises as the gyro rises. You're pushing into the move. The P term then falls and opposes the gyro. It's on the opposite side of the line from the gyro. So now it's slowing down the move. Now there's a little bit of oscillation in the middle. By the way, that's normal. Push into the move, push out of the move. Now there's a little bit of oscillation in the middle of the move. Mostly the P term is near the axis. And as you start to center the stick, there's a push negative, which is opposing the gyro, opposite side of the line from the gyro. And that's starting to slow the copter down. And a push positive, again, now finishing. And we're going to look, as you center the stick, we're going to look at the gyro for any bounce back or oscillation here. And there's the tiniest bit, actually here. Here is where we see the gyro cross the line at the end of the roll. It actually stops moving a little bit before you've centered the stick. Notice the stick is not quite centered yet. And now it begins a bounce back, and there's a little bit of an oscillation here. There's two ways that you could try to address that. This is nearly what I would call a perfect roll. If there weren't this oscillation here in the middle, I would say it's a perfect roll. And again, this is happening so fast when you're flying that this is such a tiny nit to pick that you shouldn't even worry about it. But since we're all looking at black box traces, we're all here to pick nits, right? So usually if there's a little bit of oscillation here, if there's hard oscillations, it may indicate that the P gain is too high. But if there's sort of this kind of wandering where it's not quite getting where it needs to go, it may indicate the P gain's too low by a little bit. It's right on the edge. The fact that the rest of the trace we saw no signs of high P term or high P gain makes me think that this might clean up a little bit if you were to raise it. And it seems a little counterintuitive that we've got this bounce at the end of the move, so raising P gain wouldn't that make it worse? And that's valid, but you would then probably also raise your D gain to then soften that bounce. So they kind of go hand in hand. Okay, let's look at pitch. Looking at pitch, we see something roughly similar. There's not too much activity. One thing I do notice is your pitch D gain is way low. It's very low. That's a good thing to do for tuning when you're trying to get your P term locked in and figure out where it needs to be, and you don't want the D gain sort of throwing off your results. But see how there's like barely any action at all from the D term here? It's just sort of hovering right around the axis. Yeah, so that means when you start finalizing your tune, you're definitely going to want to bring that up. You basically are not using the D term at all. It's there. You should use it, right? So you definitely want to have more D term action here. Raise the D gain. As you raise the throttle, let's see what happens. Very little, very little, very little. Not anything at all, really. So again, when you start raising the throttle like that, I would like to see, like if you got a racehorse and it's just kind of sitting there in the gate, just sort of not rolling its eyes at all. Yeah, maybe it's not going to be so fast out of the gate. Maybe you want it to be a little nervous, right? So the fact that you raise the throttle all the way, oh, I screwed that up. Sorry, hold on. I put that right back where it was. I clicked the wrong thing. There you go. The fact that you got the throttle all the way up here and the P term, you barely see any additional motion on the P term, makes me think that it's really probably too low. I'm guessing you're going to do a flip here any minute, and we'll see what that looks like. Do you do a flip? Come on, do a flip. There's another high throttle. Yeah, again, no oscillation at all. Let's see. Show me a flip. There's something. It's something like that's a flippity roll. Okay, we'll look at that. Push into the move. P term goes positive. Gyro goes positive. P term turns negative. Gyro is still positive. Now it's slowing the move down because they're on the opposite side of the line. That's completely normal. Now we see it sort of wandering here. It crosses and then it goes negative. Yeah. So see the P term now is crossing the line several times in the middle of the move before you start to center the stick, and it goes negative to slow the move down for the final end of the move. And also notice the copter ends up stopping before you have fully centered the stick. That in and of itself is not a problem necessarily, but then when it bounces back as the gyro goes to the other side of the line and bounces again. Heavy oscillation here. And now you're making it work extra hard because you did a roll and a flip at the same time. But yeah. So it's hard to judge. Again, you've got this oscillation at the end. An oscillation at the end could be caused by too high of a peak gain, but also too low. And it's kind of like the difference between something that's way over to like really taut and twitchy versus like a drunk guy staggering down the street. They're both sort of wandering back and forth, but in a slightly different way. One of them's too tight and one of them's too loose. You got to be like, like the baby bear, just right. And this one looks like it's too low. Okay, the P gain I think is too low here. And the D gain is definitely too low. D gain, I would guess it's 5. I would guess it's like 5 right now, maybe 10, probably not. And it should be at like 15. Okay, that's what I would guess. Okay, let's look at yaw. So for yaw, I've gone right to one of the high throttle sections. Everything looks okay. I don't tune yaw as aggressively because with yaw, by the time you start to get to oscillations, you're really the yaw authority on a quadcopter is so low that by the time you get to oscillations, you're way too high. You're way overtuned. So the fact that I'm seeing this line here, it looks, you got a little bit of motion. It's doing its thing. It's a little hard to judge cleanly without actually flying it. You got a little bit of activity here. Maybe it's a little too high, maybe not. Hard to judge, more by feel than by the black box trace. But if, yeah, maybe it's a little too high. Also, same as with pitch, your D term is a little low. There's usually more noise on yaw than the other axes on a copter. So you have to be a little bit more careful with your D term on yaw. I guess we're not seeing that here. The yaw is really clean, really thin. We actually have more pitch noise than yaw noise. So yeah, I think the yaw D term can come up a little as well. And maybe the yaw P term could come down just a little. That's what it looks like to me. Anyway, there's your sort of a general, just a sort of first look overview. Try that stuff, see if you like the way it flies better than the way it's flying now. And I haven't touched I-term at all because, as I've said before, it's very difficult to tune I-term just by looking at a trace. At the very least, you need video to see the bad behavior, and ideally, you're behind the sticks. So we'll just leave that alone for now. All right, hope that was helpful, and happy flying.